The Hour of Joy was an inside job.
It was?
No, it wasn't.
You heard me right. Poppy Playtime's biggest and most consequential event didn't just happen because the toys wanted to rebel one day.
What? No
It all hinged on the help of one employee, and I know exactly who it was.
Okay, looks like monsters are gonna react to game theory.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Game Theory, the show that is on this VHS right here.
Oh, I know that
watch
tape.
it, you'll need to hit that subscribe button.
That's from chapter 2.
YouTube snuck in the night and replaced my play button with a subscribe button. Listen, I don't make the rules.
That's
Let's
okay,
just
I'll
go along with
subscribe.
their weird plan for now. I'm sure it won't backfire in any way whatsoever. Today, we're diving, or should I say, falling back down the Bunzo Bunny rabbit hole that is Poppy Playtime Chapter 4. Last time we focused on how this story is going to end, with us sacrificing ourselves to save everyone, but in the end, we'll actually save no one.
Oh,
the prototype
no.
would survive and go on to wreak more havoc on the world. So with that positive outlook and the fact we can't really look much further forward than that, I wanted to instead look behind us to the start of the prototype's plan, the Hour of Joy. The Hour of Joy is the moment from this franchise, the moment that separates the lore of Playtime's past from the games we're physically
What are we
playing.
watching?
And just like last time, thanks to Chapter 4, we have been
Game
given
Theory.
a few very small clarifying details that tell us exactly how the Hour of Joy came to pass. Because while the prototype is incredibly clever, and while the toys are incredibly strong,
I'm
and
strong.
hungry, it turns out
I am
they
too.
couldn't pull off this plan.
Oh,
on
look, it's
their
the prototype.
own. They
I
needed
love the
help.
prototype.
They needed someone
that
who would
girl?
go along
I
with
have
their
no
weird plan. A
idea.
plan that would almost certainly backfire on them for doing so. Maybe watch your back, theorists. As I've mentioned, in order to look back and figure out an earlier part of the franchise, we need to actually take a closer look at one of the more recent additions to the series and work backwards. Because it's not really an indie horror franchise if you're not retroactively adding
know
lore to
these
previous
guys.
games with new ones. One of the new VHS tapes from Chapter 4 presents us with an image of a character we haven't really seen in a good while, a resource extraction specialist. These guys were the primary characters we played as in Mob Entertainment's
I
spin-off
love that
multiplayer
game.
game Project
Those guys
Playtime.
were
Here's the
so
job. You need to
yummy.
collect toy parts to make a giant toy. Get that giant toy on the train, then
I
leave.
love
Sadly,
trains.
this game has largely been abandoned
like
by
that
Mob
game.
for the last year and a half, which was a shame because it was a lot of
No,
fun
they
to
should
play.
update it.
Anyone made a fan cam edit of Mommy Longlegs to I Am Your
I know that
Mother?
guy.
But more
This
importantly,
video
it was surprisingly
pointless, you
useful
know?
for lore purposes. The main thing for us was that the toys were running amok around the factory, which sounded
So a few
awfully
toys
similar
were running
to what
around.
happened
Big
after the
deal.
Hour of Joy, the big event on August 8th, 1995, where the toys finally rebelled
Not
against
the
Playtime
worst
Co.
thing
and
to
took
happen.
over the factory. You can see the connection, right?
I
The
did
Hour of Joy
survive,
happens, the
after
toys
all.
take over, and so Leith Pierre, ever the businessman, decides to send these
He's the
resource
one that
extraction
turned me
specialists
into
into the
this
factory in order to keep their
monstrosity.
giant toy-making operations alive, leaving them to fight off the giant toys that remained.
That was
is
really
the sequence of
bad.
events that we've believed for a very long time. However,
Is he
this
talking
Chapter
about
4
the
VHS tape
theater
tells us a
incident?
slightly
Let's
different
not talk
story.
about
You see,
that
these tapes
incident.
aren't just different colors. They also
Gonna
have
be
their
loves
own
different
labels to help
colours.
us identify them. Things like break time, which was the tape with the security guards being on break that we
Oh,
talked about
yeah.
in our last video.
Darn it,
Most of
beat
them are
both of
pretty
those
on the
guards.
nose, and this resource extraction
Why does he
specialist
keep
tape is
stalking?
no different. Because
Why
on it
does
is a
he
label
keep
that
talking
reads
about the yellow
93
tape?
Theater Incident.
We don't need to
If
talk
that
about
name
this
doesn't ring a
tape.
bell, I don't blame you. We've only recently learnt about it during the Chapter 4 ARG. Man, Bob really did just hide all of their lore in this thing, hoping people would solve it and
At
pay
least they
attention,
didn't
rather
put it
than
in
putting
the
it somewhere
game.
like, oh, I don't know, in the actual game? I don't know what you're smirking at, FNAF. They learnt this from you.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You
I know
alright?
this commercial.
I learned it by watching you.
Anyway, where was I? Oh, yeah, the theater incident. As the name
Oh, yeah.
suggests, the incident took place in the Playtime
The
Co.
theater
Theater.
incident.
From what we could tell, based on all of the burnt evidence photos we received, it was a fire that broke out
Oh,
and
yeah, a
many
lot of people died.
When the incident was then investigated by Playtime Co.'s private investigator, it was determined that the culprit was none other than Harley Sawyer. These
Why
two
am I not
factors
surprised?
made it seem like a
I'm not
separate
surprised.
incident from the one
That guy's
in
a
Project
psychopath.
Playtime. They did both share the theater setting, but the ARG didn't give us any indication that the experiments were involved in the theater incident. It was just
that's not
Harley
true.
Sawyer
We were
going
there.
insane and causing a fire.
I know,
Now,
I
though,
ate
we
somebody.
have this tape that not only confirms the resource extraction specialists
Actually, I
were
think they
there
ate a
because
few
of the
people.
theater incident, it also confirms that the experiments were loose during the theater incident,
See?
just
I
like
told
they are
you.
loose in the theater of Project Playtime.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
stuffing experiments back where they came from.
I like this guy's
guarantee
accent.
It won't be so easy to toss a new coat of paint over 60 visitors dead.
No,
or the dozen
not easy at all.
specialists who went swimming in the bellies of those
You can
things.
go
It
swimming
just
in my
lines up
belly anytime.
perfectly. Project
Hey,
Playtime is the
that's my
direct
style.
result of the theater incident. Harley let the monsters out, they ran rampant across the facility, killing a bunch of
I
people and
wasn't
setting
running,
the place
I was
ablaze,
walking.
forcing Leaf to create the resource extraction team in order to get the bigger bodies locked away once
That was a horrible
Now, this may
idea.
seem like just a small change to our understanding of the Poppy Playtime line, but actually, this one alteration has massive ripple effects to other theories we've had over the years. One example is the identity of the player character. Thanks to the orientation notebook, I had theorized that its author, PW, a scientist for Playtime Co, might be the
Like a
player
video where
character.
I'm
They
in
were able
charge.
to write about the incident and the extraction specialists. So if the incident was the Hour of Joy, that would mean they
Well, it
had to have
wasn't.
survived the Hour of
So
Joy
this
in
isn't
order to
true.
talk about it. But if the resource extraction team was formed after the theater incident, as we are now
Yes.
being shown, that means PW likely suffered
Okay.
the same fate
He knows
as
what he's
their
talking
colleagues
about.
and didn't survive the Hour
Oh,
of Joy.
poor guy
Therefore,
didn't
they
make it.
can't be the player character. Now, there is still a chance that my theory is proven true down the line. We know the player didn't show up for work that day and was likely involved in the experiments due to the
Now I don't know
hallucinations
what
in
to
chapter
believe.
3, focusing on their regret, and in chapter 4,
Chapter 3
playing
was my
sounds
favorite
from the lab
chapter.
at the end of the chapter, the place the experiments were happening.
Oh, yeah. Wait, so he's saying PW was
But
making those
right now, we
sounds?
just don't have any evidence that it was
thought that was
PW
Dog
rather
Day.
than just
Why would I
another
be doing that?
scientist. And PW's diary entries do end the same
he said-
day as the Hour
he said he
of
had a
Joy. So I'm
diary.
not particularly
What kind of
hopeful.
dude has
This
a
would also
diary?
snowball into the current status of Leith Pierre. Again,
Oh, that
because
dude?
PW
Oh, he's
was
dead.
writing about Leith
Oh, I saw
forming the
his head
team,
fall
we
off.
thought that meant
It's
Leith was
true.
alive after
Then
the
I
Hour of
ate
Joy.
his
But as
brains
this is now tied to the
and
theater
gained his
incident, it's most likely
knowledge.
that he too
And then I
perished during
hugged
the
his
Hour of
body.
Joy like everyone
Wow, that's
else.
pretty
However,
messed
the
up, dude.
biggest change this has to our understanding about the lore relates to the VHS tapes that we received not in Poppy Playtime, but in Project Playtime. During each phase, we received a VHS tape that contained recordings of Harley Sawyer and his Bigger Bodies initiative. But at the end of each of them, the tape suddenly
that's
changed
Harley's
to a
phone.
text-based message from a mystery
the
character.
prototype,
Based on
remember?
their use of plurals when referring to themselves, them saying things like, "You made us this way," and their use of the same telephone that Ollie used in chapter 3, we believed this to be the prototype talking to
See?
us. Now
I
that we
told
know
you.
the Ollie we've been talking to is indeed the prototype,
What did you do with Ollie? I'm right here, Poppy.
this feels all but confirmed.
prototype's
the thing
a liar.
is, we've never really been able to put our finger on why they're talking to us, other than to feed us fans more lore. There are lines like, "You must prove yourself, and we will call you when the time arrives." Which
I
felt
think
like
he
we
was
were going to
talking
be
about
part of
me
some
because he was
big
talking
master
about me,
plan, though that
right?
didn't really make a lot of
I
sense
think.
with Project Playtime
No?
being after the Hour of Joy. But now that we know this game comes before the Hour of Joy, and thanks to a special VHS tape from chapter 4, things become much clearer.
How could this happen? There's fail-safes, security measures. It's impossible.
Personal agendas have long been the downfall of this company. Is it reasonable to believe they were conspirators?
This VHS is titled
Many
Warden Office
conspirators.
8/8/1995, the same day as the Hour of Joy. And despite there supposedly being a bunch of
This
systems in
Tom
place, the
thinks
experiments have
he's
managed
so
to get through
smart,
them and commit the
doesn't he?
Hour of Joy.
I mean,
that, my friends,
he is
is
putting it
why
all
the prototype
together.
is talking to us on
That's
the
pretty
VHS
smart.
tapes of Project Playtime. After the theater incident, they are looking for ways to kill
Look at all those
everyone, to
dead
cause
people.
the Hour of Joy,
That's
but they
scary.
need help from an employee. They are asking us to betray our colleagues and allow the toys to escape and kill everyone. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that the person watching the VHS tapes in Project Playtime is the same character as our player character in Poppy Playtime. And that's because of one crucial detail that we're given in this VHS tape.
But without executive access, how could anyone even
But
get
which
through?
It
employee
couldn't
is
just be
it?
any old
a
employee
minute.
helping the
If it's an
prototype. It had
executive,
to be
and
an
it's a girl,
executive, someone with
it can only be
access
one
to
person.
the Omni-Hand. For a while, we felt like our player character could be one of the executives, but more recently, it felt like that was less
think
and
I
less
know
the
who it
case.
is
And then
now.
in chapter 4, Harley said this.
I can't say I remember seeing your face before.
Harley knows the executives
Oh.
very well. That's been clear since the beginning. So for
But
us
the one
not
I'm
to be
thinking of has never
recognized he
met Harley
cannot be
because
playing
she was
as one of
working
the
at
executives in the
Playtime.
main series of games. But the person from Project Playtime that's watching the VHS tapes, the one that is helping the prototype, likely is. And the best part, I know which one it is. You might be thinking the answer is obvious. Harley. He's holding a big grudge against Playtime cards.
me. Okay, that
PW
doesn't
refers to
sound
him as
good.
one of the executives in the orientation notebook, and thanks to another VHS, we know he's been working with the prototype pretty much since Leith betrayed him and turned him into a discount
Okay,
FNAF
so you got me
endoskeleton.
there.
When this place was fully operational, we were beating our heads against this.
So of everyone, he's the one with motive to portray
So
the
I
company.
have
The thing he
motive,
lacks
so what?
is the means of which to do so. He was an executive before becoming an experiment himself, but he was turned into an experiment to take away some of his power.
Thanks to Leith.
You're
Yeah.
there to give the lab boys answers when they need them, and carry out procedures when and how we tell you to. That's it.
In that
I
tape
can't
with the warden,
stand
he
that
doesn't
guy.
currently have access to the Omni-Hand, and so
Oh, but I
is
know
using
who
the Hour of
does.
Joy to manipulate the warden in order to get one for himself. But if it's not him, then who is it? Well, according to the warden, only 4 people have the
Let's hear
executive
it.
access necessary to pull off something
Oh,
like
there it
this.
is.
Leith Pierre, Stella Greber, Eddie Ritterman, and himself. Quick side note, but hey, look, we now know who the 4th slide was back in Chapter 2. With the warden
I
being
think
the
we all
4th
know who it
executive,
is
it
now.
only makes
It was
sense that
Stella.
the 4th slide is his. So good
Oh,
job, Mob.
Stella.
Another minor mystery solved. Although I have a feeling they didn't give us his name because they realized coming up with a name using the letters they left on the floor doesn't really work. But I digress. With there being only 4 potential suspects, it becomes pretty easy to narrow down which one is our Project Playtime
Yes,
accomplice.
that's who it is.
Can't be the warden, as the VHS shows he's pretty scared
No,
and
it's not
confused
the
by the
warden.
whole ordeal. You know, unless he's just the most incredible liar. But we've already got plenty of those in this series, so I don't think Mob's gonna want to go back to that well too often. Right?
True.
Mob, you don't want to go back to that well too
Well,
often.
he doesn't
It's
want
also
him to.
unlikely to be Leith Pierre, as he's all in on the Bigger Bodies initiative. He'd have
Yeah,
no
but it's
reason
not
to want it
Leith.
to fail. He even
He's dead.
keeps the Doctor alive as a computer specifically because he needs him to keep the project alive. So Leith is also off the table. Before Chapter 4, we didn't really know a whole lot about Eddie. But in this chapter, we finally get to hear from the man himself, and he's fun.
I'm a businessman, Mr. Silver, and I don't like to get angry. I get paid to see that things get done. And this, like everything else, will get done.
Man, why does the British guy always have to be so unapologetically evil?
Wait,
That
so was it
leaves us
A?
with Stella as our only remaining
there we go, there's
suspect.
Stella.
Stella has always
I like
been
how
an
they think
intriguing
I'm a
character to
redhead.
me. Much like Rich, she's one of the few characters
don't
that's been
understand
around
why
on these
Stella would
VHS
wanna do
tapes
that.
since Chapter
I thought
1.
she cared
Her
about
presence
us.
felt so important that in our very first theory, we suspected that she might have been the person turned
she's not
into
Poppy.
We later changed our
right.
view on that due to some
I'm
other
Elliot's
evidence, and
daughter.
with this new chapter,
I'm
it's very
Poppy
clear Poppy is
Ludwig.
Elliot's daughter.
I wish you were here, Dad. When you were running this place, you always knew what to say.
But
I
that
miss
left
my
Stella
daddy.
without any real
I'm
role
sorry,
to fill.
Poppy.
And yet, she is
I
still
think I
very
aided
present
him.
and being shoved down our throats. Like she
I
does
will
have an
shove her down
important
my
role
throat.
that we just haven't figured
You'll
out
be
yet.
delicious.
Maybe this could be it.
Oh, here we
Except
go.
thanks to
Here's the
another
damning
VHS tape in
evidence.
Chapter 4, we hear Stella talking to Leith about being completely on board with the Bigger Bodies initiative, just like all the others.
Okay, so she was a
Work
bad
itself.
person too.
What you've all been able to do? I mean, it's nothing short of a miracle. That's a
I think
change
everybody was a
want to
bad
help
person.
make.
And like that, we are out of executives, and Stella's role is once again
Except
left
for Theo.
unanswered.
Theo's a
Or
good
it
kid.
would be if it weren't for one thing.
One
the
thing?
timeline.
What's the
In
one
Chapter
thing?
3 ARG, there was a note about the Bigger Bodies version of Catnap being introduced to Playcare. Stella
Oh,
has
1188,
written part
that's
of that
me.
report, so this takes place after her meeting with Leith in the Chapter 4 VHS. And yet,
Okay.
despite saying in the meeting that this is for the greater good, her focus is less on Catnap's effectiveness and more on how the kids were responding. She states that she actually doesn't want to use Catnap on the
What?
kids
She didn't
because it
want to
would
use
scare
me?
them. And even despite the
What's
kids
wrong with
warming to
me?
him, she claims to, quote, still have reservations. While she said that she was okay with everything
got
to leave,
regrets.
really, she still wants to protect the kids. In the actual Chapter 3, a VHS shows how excited she is to have one of the children adopted, only to realize that they are one of the children being used for an experiment.
Wait, was that-
Amazing. You'll be perfect for...
Is that me?
It appears there's
Is that Theo?
complications. The form says
Oh, no,
testing.
that's not
You're
Theo.
in charge of all this. How could you not know? I'm sorry.
Now, there is a
Who's that
world
kid
where this
supposed to
tape
be?
happens just before the one
I
we
don't
find in
get it.
Chapter 4. That
Was
this
Stella
incident is
good?
the
Or was
reason
she
Leaf
bad?
has to tell Stella what's going on. But listen to that clip again and pay
I
attention
think
to
deep down
Stella's
she was
delivery.
doing it for the good.
How could you not know? I don't.
See, she was mad about
That
it.
I'm sorry is what does it for me. She spends the conversation saying she doesn't know what's going on or what testing means.
Well,
But
she
her
did.
I'm sorry feels
she was
way
just
too
in
knowing
denial.
even. She is the head of Playcare. She should
That's
know
true.
everything that's going on. And if she didn't, I don't think she'd be keeping her composure quite so well. But she's
true,
not
she'd be all
panicking or
crazy.
promising to resolve the issue. She just sounds crestfallen, defeated, like she's had the realization that it's another kid she couldn't save. Because she does know what testing means.
So she
Then
wants to
finally, in
save
the
the
Chapter 4
kids.
ARG,
She doesn't
right
wanna
after
hurt
the
them.
theater incident, we get one more
think
recording
she's
that
looking at
shows
the
us
big
that
picture.
Stella, once again, still cares for people.
Aw, she does care about us.
People, did we really have to?
Did what was necessary, Miss Greber.
Of course.
Despite supposedly being on side with Leaf, she continues to question their violent methods and then stutters when
Then why
trying
didn't
to
she
keep
help
her
us?
composure. Because if she doesn't, she could end up like those poor people.
Word of this doesn't breathe beyond the factory's wall. I've made sure.
What we're seeing are the cracks in Stella's armor. She tried to get on board, to see things as Leaf did, but she could never really justify
So what
Playtime
happened to
Co's
Stella?
actions. The theater incident showed that the progress Leaf had promised her
wonder
wasn't
if she
being
died
made.
there.
The kids were still becoming monsters, but she also knew there was nothing she could do about it, making her the perfect candidate for the prototype's plan. After the theater incident, Stella went back to her
Personally,
office
I
in the
think they're
Playcare.
giving this
That
Stella
is when the
way too
prototype
much
reached
credit.
out through the tapes. He asked her to trust him and sent her his iconic Ollie phone to feed her more instructions when the time was right. In the Phase 2 tape, the prototype recognizes that she wants answers from them and promises they will come
At
in
least
time.
somebody
If Project Playtime hadn't
recognizes
been
her.
unceremoniously abandoned, I believe we'd have seen those answers. They would have been the prototype telling Stella exactly what she needed to do and promising her what he'd promised everyone else, that the orphans and the toys would all go free, escaping their
she was
horrible
doing it for the
fates.
right
All she'd have to
reasons.
do is use her executive access, the Omni Hand, to open the way for the prototype and all the toys
She
to
was
escape.
manipulated.
And hearing that there was finally a chance to save the orphans without the wrath of Leith or Eddie coming down on her,
See,
I
she
have
wanted to
no
save
doubt
us.
that she would have accepted that deal. But as we know oh too well at this point, all of that was just another one of the prototype's lies.
Yeah, he's a liar.
Leave the factory.
He lied to everybody.
Prototype says we can't leave. Not now, not ever.
He lied to everyone about what the Hour of Joy was. The toys didn't escape. They killed everyone in the factory, and the orphans
That's
were
so
locked
sad.
away inside the
I
prototype's
love the
lab.
Hour
Just
of
like Poppy,
Joy.
just like all the toys, Stella
we have
had the rug
another
pulled
Hour
out
of
from
Joy?
under her. She was
I'm
tricked, and based
hungry.
on how the prototype was more than willing to punish Poppy when she didn't agree with his motives, he definitely wouldn't have been above killing Stella too once she realized she'd been sold a lie. That being said, I'm not
I
totally
think
sure
I
that's
ate
how Stella's
Stella.
story ends. I'll admit, this is a little more on the speculative
know if
side.
Stella's
But just
still
like how
alive or
I've
not?
been convinced Rich is going
I
to be
think
way
she's
more
dead.
important to the actual games because he keeps showing up in VHS tapes in every chapter, I'm also convinced that Stella has to be more directly involved with the games rather than just being an off-screen
Or maybe she's
character.
still
If you
alive, I
think
don't
about
know.
it, she was in charge of Playcare.
Maybe
She
we'll see her
cared
in
for the
chapter
orphans, not
5.
just on an emotional level, but physically cared for them inside the facility. If the prototype wanted to keep
This
these
is just
orphans
such a
alive for all
sad,
these
sad
years,
story.
he might need someone with
I
the
think poor
skills and
Stella's heart
desire
was
to
in the
help
right
him do
place.
that. Stella had helped once before. She'd proven her trustworthiness, so why not have her continue to help him while he worked with the doctor to find whatever this secret
The
is?
prototype manipulated her into helping him.
Cracking that secret.
And as for Stella, while she may not have appreciated being lied to, she saw what happened to anyone that opposed the prototype. We also
She
know
was
that when
scared.
push comes to shove, she will bend the knee, just like she did with Leaf. I could
That's because
easily
she
see
doesn't
us
wanna
entering the
die.
labs in Chapter 5, but when we find the orphans, it won't be the prototype we face. It'll be
That's true.
Stella, or whatever
gonna
it
be.
is she's
It's gonna
become.
be me.
But hey, that's just a theory.
Catnap.
A game theory. Thanks for
I don't
watching.
think so.
World premiere on Game Theory. We can not only figure out how exactly Chapter 5
This
is
was
going
good.
to end, we can also learn
Make sure you
what's
guys
going to
go
happen
check out
beyond
Game
that.
Theory, like and subscribe.